An officer pulled over a nice poor black man and his son for no reason, his ego swelling with every passing second. Before the end of the encounter, Morgan Freeman steps in and silences the cop's ego in seconds. Have you ever witnessed someone lose their grip on power in an instant, or watched ego crumble in real time? Let's have your story in the comments. David Carter was a hardworking, humble man, one of those fathers who worked long shifts but always made time for his son. He had never been rich, never had flashy cars or expensive suits, but what he lacked in wealth, he made up for in wisdom. His life hadn't been kind to him. Born and raised in the rougher parts of town, he had learned that the world wasn't always fair. But instead of bitterness, he had chosen strength and resilience. And most of all, he had chosen to pass down everything he had learned to his son. David always believed that a man's greatest duty was to prepare his child for the world ahead. And on this particular day, of all days, that duty weighed on him a little more because his only son, Malik, turned 16 on this day. To many, it was just another birthday. But to David, it was a milestone, a turning point. The age where a black boy in America stops being considered a child and starts being judged as a teenager, almost at the verge of being a man. He knew it wouldn't be easy. So he had mapped out a day filled with lessons, a crash course in manhood. Malik Carter had been waiting for this day his entire life, his 16th birthday. This was the age when everything seemed to expand exponentially, where the world seemed wider, filled with endless possibilities. He wasn't naive. His father had made sure of that. Malik had always looked up to his dad. David was his rock, his mentor, his protector, and the fact that his father had planned an entire day just for him, it made him feel important and respected. Malik wasn't a rebellious teenager. He had his own mind, of course, his own dreams, his own ambitions. But he never dismissed his father's words because, in their household, wisdom was wealth. And on this day, he was ready to inherit all of it. Their first stop, the bank. Opening Malik's first bank account was a big deal. As they stood in line, David explained the importance of saving, the difference between needs and wants, and how the world respected those who knew how to manage their money. Malik listened, absorbing every word. From there, they had planned to move on to the barber shop, but David had one more stop before that, the auto shop. He wanted Malik to see how to handle basic car maintenance. Every man should know how to take care of his ride, David said to his son. Malik laughed. Dad, this car is older than me. David chuckled, patting Malik on his shoulder. It doesn't matter. You treat what you own with respect, regardless of what it looks like. It was small things like this that David wanted Malik to understand. Not just the lessons, but the principles behind them. As the evening sun dipped lower in the sky, they reached their final stop, the barber shop. The moment Malik sat on the chair, he felt it. The transition, the shift. It was a simple haircut, but to him it symbolized stepping into something bigger. David watched with pride as the barber worked, shaping Malik's hair into something that made him sit a little straighter. When the final touches were done, Malik ran his hand over his fresh cut, grinning at his reflection. David chuckled, clapping him on the shoulder. Looking sharp, son. Malik nodded, a new kind of confidence in his eyes. Yeah, Dad, feels like I'm stepping into something big. David smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment. A perfect end to a perfect day. Or so he thought. Father and son stepped outside, the night air crisp against their skin, and made their way to the car. David started the engine, pulling onto the quiet street. Malik leaned back in his seat, still smiling. His mind was alive with thoughts. He tapped his fingers on the window frame, glancing at the dashboard, then at his father's steady hands on the wheel. Dad, he said, breaking the silence, when are you going to teach me how to drive? David glanced at him with a small smirk. What, 16? And you are already trying to steal my car? Malik chuckled. Not steal, just, borrow indefinitely. David laughed, shaking his head. Malik grinned but leaned forward slightly, his voice turning more serious. For real though, I want to know how to handle myself on the road. Like, what do you do if your tire blows out on the highway, or if the brakes stop working? David nodded, appreciating his son's curiosity. Good questions. First, if your tire blows, don't panic. To panic is the worst thing you can do. The conversation continued, even as they turned into their street of residence. For a brief moment, everything felt perfect. The day had been full of lessons, full of moments Malik knew he'd remember for the rest of his life. While David and Malik were wrapping up their day, someone else was preparing to feed his ego, and they were all about to cross paths in the worst way possible. Some blocks into the street, Officer Ryan Lancaster was itching for an opportunity to flex his authority once again, his ego practically demanding another stage to dominate. He had been transferred to David Carter's area of residence not because of his excellence, but because he was a problem. Too many complaints, too many reports, and too much ego. But instead of seeing it as a punishment, he saw it as an opportunity. This neighborhood? A new hunting ground. And on this night, his ego was itching for a target. Then, he saw it. A silver sedan cruised past. It wasn't a flashy car, enough reason for him to be sure that it was his much-needed target for the night. The perfect opportunity. His fingers twitched over the switch, and the sirens wailed. The red and blue lights flashed behind David and his son. David's expression shifted instantly. His fingers curled tighter around the wheel. Malik then asked, "What's wrong?" David exhaled sharply, signaling as he pulled over. "Just stay calm, Malik." Malik swallowed hard, the youthful confidence in his eyes dimming. David had spent the entire day teaching his son about responsibility. But life was about to teach them both a lesson neither of them asked for. David gripped the steering wheel with steady hands as the red and blue lights approached them. A deep sigh left his lips. Malik frowned. "Did you do something wrong, Dad?" David shook his head. "No, son. But remember what I told you. Stay calm, keep your hands visible, and follow instructions. That's rule number 1. As David lowered the window, Officer Ryan Lancaster approached with deliberate slowness, his heavy boots crunching against the asphalt. A smirk played on his lips, his ego already inflating at the sight of the black father and son in an old car. "License and registration," Officer Ryan barked, his voice dripping with authority. David, without hesitation, retrieved his wallet and the necessary documents. But as he handed them over, Officer Ryan didn't even glance at them. Instead, his gaze flickered to Malik, his brow furrowing. "Is this your car?" the officer asked, tilting his head. David nodded. "Yes, officer. Registered in my name." The cop hummed, pretending to inspect the documents while his true intent brewed beneath the surface. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle?" Malik's heart pounded. "Why?" he blurted out before catching himself. Officer Ryan's eyes snapped toward the teenager. "Because I said so," he retorted. David placed a firm hand on Malik's arm. "It's okay, son." He turned to the officer, keeping his voice measured. "May I ask the reason for the stop?" A slow grin spread across Officer Ryan's face. He had been waiting for that question. "You were driving suspiciously," he replied, crossing his arms. David arched a brow. "Suspiciously?" Officer Ryan's fingers tapped against his belt. "Looked like you were avoiding eye contact, maybe even trying to evade me." Malik's mouth fell open. "We didn't even see you until you turned on the siren." The cop let out a short chuckle, but it lacked humor. "Boy, you sure got a lot to say for someone who should be keeping his mouth shut." David's jaw tightened, but he exhaled slowly, suppressing the frustration bubbling beneath his composed exterior. "Officer, I assure you, we were simply heading home." Officer Ryan took a step closer. "Step out of the car," he repeated, his voice firmer this time. David hesitated for the briefest moment. not out of fear, but out of the painful understanding that no matter how calm he remained, the officer had already made up his mind. He nodded and slowly unbuckled his seatbelt. As he stepped out, the cop's gaze flickered back to Malik. "You too, kid." Malik swallowed hard. He had heard about moments like this. He had seen them on the news, but now he was living it. The once exciting lessons of adulthood his father had taught him throughout the day now felt like cruel irony. David and Malik stood beside their car as the cop circled them like a predator sizing up its prey. "Got anything in the car I should know about?" Officer Ryan drawled. "No, sir," David answered. "Drugs? Weapons? Something you don't want me to find?" the cop continued. David clenched his fists, his patience wearing thin. "No, officer. You're welcome to search if you have a warrant." Officer Ryan's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. He hated when they knew their rights. In a moment, the radio on his shoulder crackled, but he ignored it. He was far from finished. He turned his gaze to Malik, his smirk returning. "And what about you, kid? You seem a little nervous." Malik's fists trembled at his sides. He had never felt so small, so powerless. David took a slight step forward, his voice firm yet controlled. "Officer, I'd like to call your supervisor." Officer Ryan's grin vanished. His ego flared. He wasn't about to let this man, this poor black man, dictate how the stop was supposed to go. As the seconds dragged on, the atmosphere grew heavier. Malik's breath became uneven as he watched his father navigate the officer's thinly veiled hostility with practiced calm. David Carter, ever composed, kept his tone measured, his hands still in plain sight. But Officer Ryan wasn't looking for cooperation, he was looking for submission. His questions became accusations, his tone sharpened with condescension. Malik's mind was filled with thoughts. Was this what his father had meant when he spoke about handling adulthood? About staying composed even when everything inside screamed otherwise? At this point, Officer Ryan was about to go off the cliff with his ego. He needed David and Malik to understand clearly that he was in charge. David understood the importance of maintaining his composure, but what about Malik? This was his first real test. Want to see how this all unfolds? Make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned so you don't miss out on the powerful showdown ahead. Officer Ryan Lancaster wasn't just enforcing the law, he was enforcing his ego. But before we get to what happens next, take a second to hit that share button. More people need to see what's about to go down. Across the street, Morgan Freeman sat at the veranda of his daughter's house, one of the very few good-looking houses in the area, bathed in the soft glow of the porch light. He had come for a quiet evening with his grandkids, but as the night unfolded, so did a scene he had seen too many times before. His sharp eyes followed every movement. Officer Ryan, towering with an air of unchecked authority. David Carter, a hard-working man now forced into submission, and Malik, frozen in fear beside his father. Morgan had seen this play out before. He knew how these moments could end. Yet he remained still, watching, waiting. Officer Ryan's grip tightened on his holster. "You want to question my authority?" he sneered, eyes locked on David. "You people always think you know better." And then, with a force that sent dust rising, David was forced down onto his knees. The weight of the moment crashed onto him. Not just the humiliation, but the terrifying realization that this wasn't about law or order. This was about power and ego. Malik panicked. His chest heaved, his body shook. And then he screamed, "Somebody help us!" His voice ripped through the night, raw and desperate. His cry cut through the night air like a siren. "Somebody help!" he shouted again, his voice trembling. Ryan snapped his head toward him, eyes burning with irritation. He had dealt with panicked civilians before. Most of them cowered. But this kid seemed different. His hand tightened on his holster. "Shut your mouth, boy," Ryan barked, stepping closer. Malik instinctively flinched, but he didn't back down. David, still on his knees, turned sharply to his son. "Malik, don't!" But Ryan cut him off, shoving him back down. "You don't get to speak." The weight of authority intoxicated him for a brief moment. Then, something changed. One by one, doors creaked open. Faces emerged from the shadows, neighbors stepping onto their porches, their eyes filled with knowing fear. Some clutched their phones, recording what they got to witness. But none moved closer. They kept their distance. Morgan leaned forward slightly, his jaw tightening. He could feel it. The shift. The point where fear turns into something dangerous. Ryan's hand hovered dangerously close to his weapon, and that's when Morgan decided enough was enough. He rose from his chair. His steps were slow, measured, his hands tucked into his pockets. The murmuring in the crowd ceased. Even the wind seemed to still as Morgan Freeman crossed the street. Officer Ryan was too lost in his power trip to notice him approaching at first. But then came the voice that changed everything as Morgan Freeman got to the point of the incident. "You should know that the world is watching, Officer Ryan Lancaster." The words fell like a hammer. The street fell into a deafening silence. The only sounds were the distant hum of passing cars and the steady clicks of phone cameras capturing every second of the moment. Officer Ryan Lancaster's chest rose and fell rapidly. The adrenaline of control still pumped through his veins. But so did something else. Recognition. He knew that voice. Everyone did. His fingers twitched near his holster, but now, not from dominance, but from hesitation, because standing before him wasn't just an old man from the neighborhood. It was Morgan Freeman, a man with a reach far beyond this street, beyond the city. A single call from him could shake the very ground Officer Ryan stood on. Officer Ryan's lips parted slightly as if to speak, but Morgan Freeman took another step forward, not aggressively, just deliberately. "I know exactly why you were transferred here," Morgan said, his voice steady. "A reputation follows a man," he continued. Morgan let the words settle. "Yours? Well, let's just say it's catching up to you." Officer Ryan's face turned red, his ego lashing out like a wounded animal. "Step back, sir," he growled, but it was weaker this time. Less command, more plea. Morgan didn't move. "And if I don't?" he asked, tilting his head. "What then?" In that moment, Officer Ryan's eyes darted around, past the growing crowd, past the sea of lifted phones. This footage would spread. Not tomorrow, not in an hour, right now, he thought to himself. Morgan Freeman could see the battle happening inside the officer, the crumbling of unchecked power under the weight of accountability. Then, in that signature calm, he spoke again. "Power isn't in how loudly you shout. It's in how many people listen when you speak." The words sank into the night air, weighing heavier than any threat. Then came the final blow. "And trust me, officer, you won't get away with this." The cop looked around again. The neighborhood, the phones, the silence. He had already lost. With his jaw clenched, he stepped back from David and Malik. In a single movement, his authority crumbled. Malik rushed to his father's side, helping him up. The onlookers, once frozen, shifted closer, the energy in the air shifting from fear to relief. And Morgan? He simply gave Ryan a deep look. His gaze conveyed everything without uttering a single word. If this moment gripped you, hit that like button. The moment had slipped away from Officer Ryan. The authority he thought he had, gone. His reputation, hanging by a thread. Morgan didn't move. He didn't break eye contact. His presence had done what no argument, no plea, nor any act of resistance could. His voice, firm but welcoming, cut through the thick tension in the air. This situation isn't just another incident. This has become a conversation the world needs to hear. He then turned to the father and son. "David and Malik, how about you join me on national television? Let's talk about what happened tonight. Let's make sure the world hears this story." David's eyes widened. Malik's mouth fell slightly open. Could it really be a live interview with Morgan Freeman? They couldn't believe it. Before they could respond, Morgan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, his brows lifting slightly. It was the police department. He answered, his deep voice sounding effortlessly. Yes? A professional but urgent voice came through. Good evening, Mr. Freeman. This is Captain Rebecca Holt from the City Police Department. We've just received live footage of an incident involving one of our officers. Can you confirm you're at the scene? Morgan's gaze flickered toward David and Malik. Yes, I'm here. Captain Holt's voice softened. We deeply regret what transpired tonight. It is nothing close to what the police department stands for. Also, we would like to speak with Mr. Carter and his son immediately. Could you kindly hand them the phone? Morgan turned to David, raising a brow. The police department would like to speak with you. David hesitated before taking the phone, and once he got the phone, his voice was steady but firm as he began to talk. This shouldn't have happened in the first place. Captain Holt didn't argue. We agree, sir. We are deeply sorry for what you've been put through. Please do well to visit the station at your earliest convenience. This matter will be handled with urgency, and Officer Ryan Lancaster will be reprimanded sooner than later. David responded before handing the phone back to its owner to finish up with the call. He looked at Malik, then at Morgan Freeman, a slow nod of understanding passing between them. Officer Ryan's face burned with shame. His ego had been his armor for years, but now, it was nothing more than dead weight dragging him under. He couldn't bear to stand there any longer. With clenched fists and a stiff jaw, he turned sharply and strode toward his patrol car. He yanked the car door open, slid into the driver's seat, and without another glance, sped off into the night. After the cop's departure, the air, once thick with fear, now carried something different. A shift, a realization, and a quiet victory. Morgan Freeman turned back to David and Malik, his expression thoughtful. You'll remember this night, he said softly. Make sure you remember the lesson too. Malik nodded, his eyes glistening, the weight of the night still settling in. David extended a hand, his voice thick with gratitude. Thank you. Morgan simply smiled and shook David's hand, and then he took a deep breath, glancing at David's car. It was old, worn out, a symbol of the struggle David had endured to provide for his son. He looked back at David and Malik and said, You know, I don't believe you should drive this old car at all anymore. David frowned slightly, confused. What do you mean? Morgan Freeman smiled. I mean, as my way of saying sorry that this even happened to you. I'd like to get you a new one. Malik's eyes widened in shock. Wait, what? Morgan Freeman chuckled. Consider it a token. David's lips parted, but no words came out. This wasn't charity. This was recognition. Respect. His voice came out hoarse. I don't know what to say. Morgan patted his shoulder. Then don't say anything. Just be ready to drive something that matches the kind of father you are. Malik looked between them, eyes glistening, his heart full. Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Seriously. For everything. Morgan nodded. Just promise me that the day you get behind the wheel, remember what you learned tonight. Malik nodded, the lesson forever imprinted in his mind. As Morgan turned and walked back to his porch, the neighborhood stood in awe. One voice, one presence, one moment silenced Officer Ryan's ego in seconds. If you believe in standing against injustice, share this video. And for more powerful stories that matter, subscribe now. Watch our next video to uncover more stories that demand to be heard.